The following podcast is scheduled for one recording with no time limit. Making their way down to somewhere in the ring, Andrew Sanford and Ryan Sprague.
I think we can start getting into things with this. This is probably the first show in a few weeks where Ryan has not worn his Mets hat. And I wonder
why.
Oh, how
You just had to bring it
sad.
up. You know what? Just because of that, Andrew.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. I'm wearing my purple
up.
for Grimace. That's how that works.
The loyalty and the pride is appreciated. It's hard to come by. It's good,
I know, man.
So I will always, I'll forever respect that kind of thing. So.
Thank you for your condolences, both.
It's okay to take losses sometimes, you know. It's okay.
It was a great season.
I say that from my golden throne, but you know.
And I feel like too, like Steve Cohen, who has God amounts of money, has already been like, "Oh, we're absolutely spending next year. Like we're good.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not over."
Yeah,
it's because there's so many players they have to keep ultimately, and who knows what else. So it's good that there's somebody there that'll contribute to that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And
Andrew, who is this? Who's with us?
Oh, right. Yeah, we should probably introduce the show. This is Somewhere in the Ring, a podcast where we usually talk about wrestling, mostly WWE stuff, and sometimes other stuff as well, AEW, New Japan, etc. I am Andrew Sanford, joined as usual by my wonderful co-host Ryan Sprague, and we have a very special guest today, joining us from Ringside Collectibles, Tom Sanford, my older brother. Hi, Tom. I'm going to call you Tom that one time, and then it's going to be Tom.
Don't do that again. That's weird.
Oh, no.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on this for an extra special episode during the Halloween season with I hear Chucky involved. So that's one of my favorite.
Yes.
So.
Very
Chucky,
excited.
Who not only has long-held ties to pro wrestling, but specifically the Steiner family for some reason, which we'll get into.
I don't think there's some reason. I think there's one reason, and that's the only reason. And that's how it's been for 20 years. And then suddenly they were like, hey, look, we have this thing that happened 20 years ago. 25 years ago. Let's re-involve it. Like,
that's when you know the writers have truly run out of material.
Have they run out of material, Ryan, or have they been planning it the entire time?
It's playing the long game.
It's like that memo that started in Turner Broadcasting and made its way all the way to TKO. Like that's one was like, we just got this. What is this about?
Thomas, for people who didn't grow up with you, please tell the folks at home a little about yourself.
Sure. I grew up alongside Andrew in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where we watched wrestling and watched Chucky. And I, grew up a really big, we grew up, I think, like kind of big to casual wrestling fans. And I would say that I grew out of it once I hit college, other than like a couple of things. And I just kind of forgot about it until I started working at Ringside Collectibles, wrestlingfigures.com in the year 2008 was my first year there.
Really?
Yeah, as crazy as that seems. Yeah, yeah. So my very first night of work ultimately was like dinner with Terry Funk and Animal of the Road Warriors. So it was like a really wild reintroduction. And I was just in my mind, like, it's real easy to kind of, wrestling is, of course, is in its own little bubble, I would say, gently, but I would also say like, it's real easy when you're out of that bubble to step back in and be like, oh, I remember why this was all so much fun and like, what's so great about it and everything like that. That's exactly what happened to me. And I've kind of been in the tornado ever since. Like I had a stint at Ringside and then I left the company 2013 and at 14, roughly around there. Then I started wrestling on my own, just based solely on, a passion for it and kind of like something beyond the toys, because I work with the toys and stuff like that. But what I've liked most about wrestling always has been like the wrestling itself and not necessarily the toys.
Sure.
So I tried to maintain that, and I've had, long story short, some adventures on the independent wrestling scene. You know, I won't go as far as to say like I've been a staple or anything like that, but I worked pretty hard to make sure that I was like doing things that I thought were fun and try to be like successful at them. And you know, of course, that's the other kind of that's the fun side of thinking about wrestling. Then there's like the challenging side. There's so many elements to it. There's so much like discipline to it. There's so much discipline. There's so much politics involved, unfortunately. But that's with anything like creative, right? Like you're making new friends or not, or what have you, and making this person happy and this person not happy. And it's a kind of a wild world, top to bottom. And there's a lot that can happen within that, in my opinion. So a lot of fun. I haven't done that much lately, but I'm back with Ringside Collectibles, working with them again in kind of a new capacity over the past few years. And you know, the rest is whatever the rest is. So.
Yeah. I because we don't usually have this kind of opportunity, can we talk about your collarbone?
Sure.
What happened?
You know, it's not a huge deal. I try not to. You know, wrestling injuries. I think there's kind of a mentality and a general sense when becoming a wrestler, especially like on the independent scene, about how you want to portray yourself, right? And there's a lot of like blueprints that make it say that make it seem like everyone who goes through an injury or something is like, oh, I have to fight hard and go back to it, and you know, really step up here. And I've never really felt like, part of the reason that wrestling is so challenging for me now is like that kind of a mixture with social media that it's become. That's like not really my favorite thing, but that's I don't have a problem with it. But for me personally, it's a little bit of a challenge. So when I did break my collarbone wrestling, like I did all that, like I had the comeback, and then I had, you know, so essentially we were at practice one night. I was practicing some arm drags. This was like when I first started practicing arm drags, and you know, I got some positive feedback in wrestling, but this is one of the first times somebody was like, dude, you are nailing this. Like, this looks so good. You look like, somebody had said to me, like, you look like a dolphin, like coming up out of the water. Like, you're very good at arm drags.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
Of course,
very Lisa Frank. That's
for sure. I felt very Lisa Frank doing that. And for sure I did. It was super colorful. And so of course, like, you hear something like that and your endorphins kick in and you're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to stop now. So I'm just like flying through these arm drags, like 6, 7, 8 at a time, which they're very, you know, anything can happen in wrestling. In my opinion, you know, at any time, even on like the simplest moves. And the arm drag, for all intents and purposes, once you get the hang of it, is kind of a simple move. But I don't know if I was being, to this day, I don't know if I was being careless, or I'm sure it was my fault, not the person I was with. But on one of them, I just kind of went over this person, and it's very important, like where you're, you know, without getting into all the detail of it, like where your hand placement is. And I'm pretty sure like I messed up my hand placement because I was just in such like a different world. And I went over this person and I just went like head down, bam, into the head and shoulder into the mat. And it like stopped everything cold in the room, because like, if you've ever been in a wrestling ring, or you know you're practicing or training or having a match or whatever you're doing, there's like very specific sounds that the ring makes, like instinctually, for anyone doing it. And when the sound is off, like everyone knows it. Like when you know something's not right with the way someone's hitting a ring, it's a very obvious, like different noise. And in this case, it was like an obvious different noise. And I rolled over and I sat up, and I was just like, I couldn't even be in pain. I was like pissed, you know. I was like, I think I broke my collarbone, and I did. And sure enough, like, you know, it's like sticking out and not out of the skin, thankfully, but like it was pretty gnarly. And funny, you know, I won't throw like the wrestler under the bus, because I saw him you know, maybe a year or two ago and talked to him about this. But there was someone there who is, you know, pretty prominent at this point on Raw, I would say. And he was like, oh yeah, well, isn't it one of those things where maybe you can just kind of like pop it back in? And I was like, I don't know. Like we're all kind of standing around trying to figure it out. So I took my whole arm and I like rotated it, and I was like, nope, that's not right. And I just for sure like grinded it even worse. But I would say like, that was a tough moment. Like someone drove me to the emergency room, but I felt like really alone in that moment because as soon as I got back, like I drove myself home with one arm with a stick shift because I had everybody else was like, we got to go home. Like, I'm sorry, we can't help you. And I'm like on my own with this busted wing basically. And I haven't even been able to go to the doctor for real yet. So I just like drive home. I like sit up in my bed for 3 hours and then go right to the doctor. And they're like, yeah, it's either, you're probably going to have surgery. And, ultimately I ended up having surgery. I still have to this day, a plate over the collarbone and 8 screws. There's worse injuries that could happen and worse things that happen. I'm pretty grateful. But after that, like it was simple. It's like simple determination when you want to get back on a horse like that. And I was like, as soon as I could get back in the gym, I got back in the gym. Like as soon as I was healed, I healed. I think it was like 6 months after I broke it, I was already ready. I had my first match.
Wild.
Which like the school that I was at, like they take matches and stuff very seriously. Like you have to kind of earn the ability to be in a match, especially like based on your skill set. And I'm certainly not like the best wrestler and by any means, but I'm pretty humble about it. I know what I'm good at. I know like what I like to put forward with myself, and I'm otherwise like quiet with it. I don't like rhetoric. I don't like craziness, any of that kind of thing. I'm just like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm involved. This is how I like respect wrestling. And that's it. I don't want to get involved in any of like the mess of anything else. And so thankfully I was lucky enough that after that injury, I was given the opportunity for a match and it kind of took off from there. I think it created a whole new world of challenges for me. Like a bunch of people that have no idea or didn't understand like what Dramatico was or is. And still to this day, it's kind of like, has been challenging to like explain this character to people. They're like, well, is it a Shakespeare gimmick? I'm like, kind of, but yeah, it's just kind of an extension of me.
I'm one of those people. That's on me.
Well, yeah, it's a fair
I
question.
love it.
Fair question, but like, I think in being asked that question, I was always like, yes, but if you make me go out there week to week and say to be or not to be and just get, squashed, I don't want to do it. Like, that's not what this is, So just as much as kind of like people want certain things out of you in the wrestling business, like you have to know what you want yourself. And I think to a degree that's kind of kept me unfortunately stagnant in a way, because it's really, really hard to connect with somebody that understands what you want and to be like happy with their ideas in comparison to your ideas. Like I'm not of the mindset that it's like, we want to toss you in a dumpster and do this to you. I'm always going to say no of something I don't like, whether other people like it or not. I appreciate the idea of like, well, you should be happy to be on the show and you are contributing and whatnot. But like, I'm sorry. I this is a character I made myself. I'm happy with it. I see it in comparison to other characters. Like it's either going to be like this or we're not going to work together. Like, because this is not in a world full of people that want to like work for WWE and AEW and whatnot. And I don't, that was never my like career aspiration or career goal. My goal was to like have a great time, respect wrestling, and continue it in the way that it that it means so much to me. And that can be challenging, that's like tough stuff, but I just put my foot down and I had matches and had a good time with it even after the broken collarbone. So
cool.
Yeah.
So because I've talked about this on the show before, how you were a gateway for Matt, our younger brother, and I for a lot of things. Wrestling was definitely one of them. Do you know like when you were attracted to wrestling at the early, like how early, how like when you really started to get in, and maybe even what wrestler kind of grabbed you?
So here's what I'll say, Andrew, and I'm sorry to say this, but I actually have a disagreement with you. I don't think I was not a gateway into wrestling for you guys. You were the gateway.
Ooh.
What?
You were the gateway into wrestling for the rest of us. And the funny thing is, like, at the start, here's my only wrestling up until this happened was like, in all of ours, I think, was video games, like a rental of like a Super Nintendo game or like the NES game.
So
I
think I know where you're going with this, but keep going.
We weren't consistently watching wrestling in the house until middle school, or at least like my middle school age. And you begged mom to sign up for this like contest at a gas station, like a Jiffy Lube or something. They were like, put in your name to win free wrestling tickets in a raffle. And you're like, mom, please. And we did it, and you won. You won these free wrestling tickets.
What?
So, like, yes, this was Andrew that won these tickets.
That's so funny.
And I can remember you and Matt getting like so excited and wrestling, and me kind of like rolling my eyes at it, but then like starting to watch it and being like, I actually like this too. Like, I get this.
Yeah.
So we went to this wrestling show. If you'll remember, we met Draws and Too Cold Scorpio.
I don't remember meeting anybody. I remember seeing them. Like, I can remember most of the card.
The funny thing is, I remember the opposite. I hardly remember the card at all, and I remember someone.
This is so great. I love like getting both sides of the story, like rewriting history here.
It's wild. Someone behind us. The only thing I remember about the actual show is someone behind us chanting "Luna, Luna, Luna" with Luna when Luna Vachon was having a match.
Right.
That's literally it. I feel like DX was there, right? And there were a bunch of.
It was. We got to see.
The fact you remember this is so funny to me, and you don't remember like anything else.
I remember doing the raffle. I could have swore you watched wrestling before this.
No way.
That was
what started it. Was the raffle.
That's so funny.
We have the Luna chanter to thank for all.
Yeah, we do. That's stuck.
And Andrew's good luck, I guess. I never win anything.
Yeah, so funny. I couldn't believe he did it. It was such a shock.
I used to win way more. I remember I won free tickets to Revenge of the Sith in high school at one point too.
That's cool.
I specifically remember going to see that with a chicken quesadilla in each cargo pocket. But
always smuggle food to the movie theater when you can.
Always. But we got to see Too Cold Scorpio and Farouk against Southern Justice, and Jeff Jarrett brought them out. I think the Oddities were there, but they must have been, but I don't remember who they wrestled or if it was just Luna. We got to see Kane and Vader in a cage match.
I vaguely remember that. Vaguely.
Yeah, Kane against Vader in Knoxville, Tennessee mayor Glenn Jacobs. And we got to see it was DX against the Nation. That was the end. And I specifically remember at one point Billy Gunn like bouncing on one of the mid turnbuckles like he was humping it or something. And I was like, that guy's cool.
I would definitely give a body part to like relive that show. The fact I have zero memory of it really makes me sad. But the reason, so we had a meet and greet before, and we knew that there would be a meet and greet, right? So like we were trying to we had all these expectations in our head. We were like begging mom, like, oh, we need like a Shawn Michaels plaque and a Stone Cold Steve Austin plaque and all this stuff. And then we're in this room and they're like, all right, we're getting ready to bring the wrestlers. And we're just like, our eyes are wide. And then it's like in walks Draws and Too Cold Scorpio, who I have no wrestling problems with either of them, but it kind of
of course,
a little bit, it took the wind out of our sails because we were expecting like, kind of the A-list stars, which they were not at the time, unfortunately. But I will say, like, a lot of people hate that Draws was in Legion of Doom. Like, because I met Draws when I was younger, I was like happy that he was in Legion of Doom. You know what I mean? So those meet and greets, they really have an effect on you as a kid if you like come across, Draws, Too Cold Scorpio and Kurt Angle. We met at a meet and greet.
That I remember. Mom stood in line for us as we walked around. Yeah,
that was a blast. He was like so nice and so cool to us.
He was really nice.
I always loved Kurt Angle because of that. Always. Like even when he was like such a doofus on TV, it was like still there's like something you can't help when in liking someone after you meet them at a meet and greet,
Sure.
My one meet and greet, Thomas, and I've told Andrew this. Sable and Mark Marrow.
Wow, that's an interesting meet and greet.
At the New York State Fair.
Wow.
I have a photo. In fact, I'll insert it right here.
Can't wait to see it
up on the screen. post
Oh,
them.
look at that! Wow,
Look at that! Isn't that
look
amazing? And they could not have cared less. They would not take their sunglasses off to take a photo with me. Sable said something very complimentary to my father, and Mark Marrow got super pissed about it. And then they ushered us off. So that was my one meet and greet I've ever had with wrestlers.
Why trade it for
Sable
anything else
just
after
exquisite taste in men. I feel like your
Dude,
dad's an outlier.
I don't know what it is about my dad. His first kiss ever was Dolly Parton. I'm not kidding you.
I'm sorry, what?
Wow.
I'm not kidding you. He went to a Dolly Parton concert when he was, I think, in his early 20s or maybe his late teens, and he was in the front row. And all he did was say, I love you. I love you. I want to marry you. And she literally bent down, kissed my dad, like right between the cheek and the lips, and then kept singing right after that. So
Amazing.
that's my dad for you. And we went to
Sounds
see.
like he has a slight type, I would say.
I think so, man. Yeah, it's really starting now. Now that I'm putting it together and connecting the dots. Yeah, I don't like that, Thomas. Thank
Dolly
you.
Parton and Sable, there's some similarities there.
Oh God.
just a couple.
All right,
That's,
this is going to be
oh,
years
boy.
of therapy now.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, sorry, guys.
To connect things a little bit, because we did, and I told Ryan this was going to happen. I've almost, aside from our recap episode last week, I've almost entirely hijacked the podcast this month to talk about horror movies and the like.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's find it. We've had some crossover kind of stuff. We talked about Santo and the Blue Demon with Hoff Matthews, which is a really fun luchador movie.
Yeah.
We talked about a Texas death match between Vader and Cactus Jack, which took place on a Halloween Havoc. Thomas, do not watch that match. It was really...
Maybe I've already seen it.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of matches between them. It was one of the worst, because I feel like they used to wrestle.
Years of therapy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Any match with a stun gun, I'm sorry. I'm out.
It was rough. But so we did that with John Trowbridge. Next week, we're going to be talking about Leprechaun Origins. We're bringing Hoff Matthews back and making him watch that movie, which one of my ringside memories is getting to have dinner with Hornswoggle. So that's going to connect a little bit there. And this week, we're talking about Child's Play. And that my man's right there, Charles Lee Ray, Chucky himself, who has a pretty long history with wrestling so far, but we have a long history with Chucky, and I think we can go over that a little bit first, because that one, I talk all the time, and I've talked here about how our mother used to let us see things way too early. Like, I don't know if you realize this, she took us to see Halloween H2O in theaters when I was 9 and Matt was 8.
Oh my God.
And you were 12.
Reasonable, I have to say.
I will say, of all the Halloween movies, that one's not the craziest by any stretch.
Like it's not. It was slightly different back then, and I would say it's not like she took an 8 and a 9 and a 12-year-old to see Terrifier. You know, like
that's fair. That's fair.
H2O is very different.
Friend of the show, so be careful what you say.
That's true.
Fair
we have had.
Hey, look, with no opinion one way or the other. Terrifier is much more graphic than like what you would see with like an H2O. That's the only point I'm making.
Right.
That's so. I love that. Like I was not a sheltered child by any means. My parents were very open, but I don't think at that age my parents would have let me have seen a movie like this unless I like snuck down to watch it in the middle of the night or something. I love it. I love it.
I think as long as there wasn't blatant nudity, they were usually fine.
Yeah,
and even
if it was like nudity was their big like red flag.
Yeah,
I mean, murder
unless it was murdering someone nude, also okay. Like I think there's this kind of weird. But Child's Play, I have like later memories for, and I feel like the first one I saw was the third one when we all kind of rented it. Had you seen any of those before that? Or
I was thinking about this. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Because I was just saying, because there's a 4-year difference between us. So you saw a lot. And I think that's why we also saw stuff with you things of that nature.
Well, I would say like we were all. I don't think there was a huge difference of like what I was watching that you guys weren't. Like even though, we had that kind of Malcolm in the Middle brotherly tension back then. Like I typically in my head, even back then, I was like, if I'm watching this, I kind of like want to watch also with Andrew and Matt, and so like I was knowing we were going to talk about this today. I was like trying to pinpoint in my head when we
It's hard, right?
first watched Chucky, but like different things kind of spoke to me. Now, it's definitely like the mid 90s, I gotta say. Like, and so this is the thing I find like so interesting about Chucky and like the idea of like a kid watching Chucky, because of course there's going to be people that immediately like throw their hands up. They're like, no way, my kid is like not watching this. So I think just as a current parent and like just a person that kind of lived through it, I would say that like if you as a kid can understand that something is like make-believe and you're like not meant to learn behaviors from a movie, like there's nothing wrong with enjoyment as long as you're not going to feel sick or like traumatized or something like that. And I think there's a kind of a threshold you enter at a certain age, whatever it is, that you're able to accept things in that way, in my opinion. So for me, what I do remember about Chucky, I can't like exactly say whether we like watched it when we lived in the South or when we moved back to the North. I feel like we already started watching them in the South, and here's why. One of the things that really sticks out to me about horror films in general, not just Chucky, but as a kid in a video store, there's some really, really, really intimidating VHS covers.
Yes. Yeah.
Like one of the ones I think of is what is the name of that movie with the monkey with the symbols?
Monkey Shines.
Monkey Shines.
Right.
Very scary VHS cover, right? Then you watch Monkey Shines, that little monkey with the symbols is not even in there. It's like
not even
about a real monkey. It's a completely different situation. Chucky, really intimidating VHS covers, right? Like the first one is him with like the cigarette stain on his face. The second one is him with the scissors about to cut off the crying Jack in the Box. And then the third one is just close up with like his nosebleed or whatever it is. They're very aggressive, all three of them, especially for a kid who's used to like happy toys and how you see them. So I can remember myself like seeing them, feeling uncomfortable, passing them again, feeling uncomfortable, passing them again, feeling maybe less discomfort and more curiosity. And then like you finally reach the point where you're like, all right, let's do this. Like, is this something that's really going to scare me? I'm going to watch. Like and that's what I remember about being a kid that age. Like, let's test myself and see what I can get through.
Yeah.
When you finally to take that step as a kid, when you finally watch like a Chucky, it's you have a great time. It's like the greatest thing you could ever do. Like, I had a film professor one time tell me, they were debating Clockwork Orange, and he was like, I saw it when I was 13. I had a great time. And I totally like that resonated with me because it's like, there's something about a kid seeing something that is, they've never seen before. They're not supposed to see. And if you're of the right mind, that it's not real, but you're like taking it all in. And it's like, wow, this is like kind of enjoyable in this kind of crazy way. Back to Chucky. It's like, it's like when you suddenly realize like, you're not as afraid of it as you think, like it's fun. Like you see it from a whole different perspective that age too. Like Chucky murders the babysitter that's like that makes Andy go to bed. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, that babysitter kind of a jerk, not really so nice to him. So it's like did she get what she deserved a little bit? Like suddenly you spend the entire movie like Andy is trying to get away from Chucky and he wants to be out of the situation, but there's these like weird kind of energies and themes underneath it that it's like, he is kind of like not a bad person to have in your life in some cases. Like, he gives you the moments to do whatever you want and within reason, of course, as a kid watching the movie. Not if like I was actually living it, I would want to get away from Chucky too.
Right.
Watching it, it's like a whole different kind of situation.
I also think what's kind of
apologist. I love this. I'm loving this.
A little bit. I'm definitely a little bit of a Chucky.
No, I totally get what you're saying.
I think what's fun too is that first one, and I know Ryan hasn't seen it in quite some time, and then we'll get into your most recent experience with Chucky in a sec. But the first one, I've tried to look this up before to see if the trailers that were released at the time gave away the fact that the doll was alive. Because I do think there's elements of it that are, at least for the first like third, that try to make you think that maybe Andy's doing this. It goes away at one point. There is a hard pivot where Chucky's just standing up and talking to his old business partner. But I feel like when Don Mancini probably got that script out there, people were probably reading and going, "Wait, what?" Like,
like don't quote me on this, but what I think I've read in like, IMDb trivia and whatnot is that script was initially like meant to be more vague and mysterious and open-ended with that idea. So it was meant to cause that kind of question for a viewer. But I think I don't know if it was like as they were making it or like a rewrite or what, it became, less about that and more about the emphasis on Chucky himself. So,
and I think because with Child's Play 2, it goes over to Universal. He basically becomes a Universal monster. I think the emphasis then like very much shifts because there's some posters and I think even VHS covers and where it is their high rise, like the apartment building they live in, and like lightning behind it, and it says Child's Play, and there's just a pair of eyes up there.
Right.
Yeah. But Ryan, so you saw Child's Play about 15 years ago, you said?
Yeah, I remember watching it. It was on, I think, USA Network at like midnight with a buddy of mine. And again, like Thomas said, it was a moment where it had to have been more than 15 years ago, but
sure. Yeah.
Where I challenged myself. I'm like, I'm not into these sort of things. I'm a Star Wars guy. I'm whatever at the time. And I was like, let's do it. Like, let's, and when you're with another buddy and, you definitely want to see, if you could do this, the peer pressure's on. And I did. And I remember really enjoying it. And the next day, like screaming to the world, I saw Child's Play. Nobody cared. Not a single person in the world cared. But for me, it was a moment of pride. And I just remember it really affecting me. And also being terrified of dolls after that, which is literally the point of the movie and how much of an icon it would become.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That fear holds to this day, was I was going to say.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you challenged yourself again today.
I did with my morning coffee. Yes.
Yeah. What did you do?
I watched, upon Andrew's recommendation, Bride of Chucky, which I've never seen. And what a 180 from the original movie. My God.
Just out of, are those the only two you've seen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Very interesting. Wow. That's
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
You're a unicorn.
I am. I know.
Very untypical. That's
Thomas, I had a good friend over on Sunday, David Lawson, friend of the show. He has only seen Bride of Chucky, and he watched it Saturday night because he knew he was coming over.
That's also very interesting.
What a moment in time this one was too. Like early 2000s.
You could, well, it's 98.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you could just like feel the hot topic dripping off of this.
Well, I would argue that Hot Topic took a lot of influence from this movie. Like they probably made tons of money off of this. And like who knows?
And the promotion. What I love is it's so, again, to get into more Universal monster stuff, it leans into Chucky being all stitched together and things like that, and this kind of new look, which would hold for like a decade, just about, I think, until whenever Curse of Chucky comes out in like 2013, because you'll get Seed after this. But there was some promotion with this movie that we're going to talk about, and I guess, Ryan, you said you have a clip ready for that one?
Yeah,
that we will insert in later.
Yep.
Go ahead, roll that beautiful bean footage. Right. Oh yeah, so that was Chucky showing up on Monday Night Nitro, which I kind of remember. Do you remember that at all, Thomas?
I do.
Talking to Rick
This
Steiner. You
moment?
too?
Not only do I remember it, I remember the day at school the next day, because this is like, you have to remember this is like prime attitude. This is like wrestling's like the boomest of boom periods that wrestling like will ever have, you know. So like,
I'm imagining Thomas around the school water cooler in the cafeteria. Did you guys see Nitro last night?
so Ryan, here's the thing, like because I in my head I remember it like very well the next day, and you're not that far off. Like that's kind of how it was. Wrestling is like, you know, it was watched, and the next day it was discussed just like any other TV show, but like among kids, like for sure.
Right.
And this was like, we had just moved, so I wasn't, you know, too I wasn't being like too social yet, but I could hear, you know, people talking about it. And I think, I don't know that this segment caused anything other than confusion for kids. And that's what I remember. And I remember people talking about it the next day. And the line that sticks in my head is this kid in class saying, so I don't know if like this means that Chucky is going to become a wrestler or what. Like, and that was what he said. And everyone just kind of shrugged, and that was it. And we just all kind of moved on. And that was it's like, yeah, you know, because at the, you know, in that clip that you see at the end, he like says, stay away from, who did he say? I forget who he said, but he basically like threatens Rick Steiner to stay away. And it's like, he is very clearly promoting the movie, but he's also like kind of peppering a little bit more in that. And it's strange. I don't know why they had him say, you know, I don't know where that line came from, that they were like, let's make it sound like next week he's going to like protect, you know, maybe they had something else in mind. And the next week, that also happens in wrestling all the time, right? Like week to week, like something could be there. And then it's like, okay, this is dropped. It's over. You never know. You know what I mean? So, and that's, I don't think that's what happened here. I think it was just like a promotion, but it is funny that he was like aggressively talking to Rick Steiner, you know? So
yeah. I like to imagine that Brad Dourif also thought he was going to be back next week. He's like, I'm ready. I'm ready to get in there.
He seems all good to do whatever they ask him.
Seriously, it's still funny to Ryan. I don't know if you knew this. Brad Dourif is currently retired. I believe he's about 70, except for Chucky. He will only come back to the beach. He even was like slight spoilers, like played a live action version of himself, like in the newest season of Chucky. He loves this part. He loves this part. He loves working with his daughter. I don't blame him on that one. Like there is just because she's in there. She will play the younger version of him in the show. It's real good. It's real crazy.
Legacy, baby. I love it.
So Eric Bischoff was asked about this somewhat recently. And we have a little clip as well of him defending it. And we'll cut to that real quick. And we'll talk about old EB.
Oh, I love this. This is so awesome. I love it. We started a trend. We saw Chucky in the promotion in WWE recently. So many things that happened in WCW first. Nitro was the cutting edge.
Don't you dare take credit for Chucky. You shouldn't be proud of Chucky. What's wrong with you, Eric?
Why not? I mean, it was awesome. It was the first time we integrated that character in a way, and we merged the cross-promotional opportunities between feature films and a cult classic and wrestling. It was unbelievable. We should have gotten awards for that. Instead, we got a check. Take the check. It's cool.
Do you remember how sizable the check was?
No, I don't. I think that one, I don't think that one came through WCW. I think that one actually came through Turner ad sales.
It reminds me of that quote from Jurassic Park when you're saying, we found a way to you're excited about it. The line from Jurassic Park is, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
That's very fitting, isn't it?
Chucky in WCW? Like,
but it was Halloween Havoc too. Come on now. It was thematic. Right?
I could see how, if I'm Rick Steiner, if I wasn't your hunting buddy, I would think you were mad at him.
I think Scott had fun. Or Rick. I think Rick had fun with it. I'm going to have to ask him now.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Rick and I had this weird. I mean, Rick was so cool, but he never bitched or complained or even quietly suggested things to me like that if he was upset. So maybe he was, and I was completely oblivious to it because I thought I was, achieving something by cross promoting with a big movie studio. So I might have been all sucked into my own opportunities and goals and not even realize that he was upset about it. But I'm going to have to ask him.
Well, here's the thing. In fairness, back in JCP, he used to draw a hand puppet on and talk to himself. So, all this time later, cutting promos on dolls, it's just another day at the office, maybe.
Hey, Mick Foley had a sock.
I mean, that's the thing. Like,
come on.
I'll never forget we were taping a podcast with Mick Foley on his great podcast that comes out on Friday called Foley's Pod. And cheap plug, shameless. And he's sort of poking fun at how stupid it was to have Hulk Hogan coming out and playing the air guitar. And he's just lamenting for about 5 minutes about how stupid he looked and how silly it was and how he couldn't believe this was wrestling. And then when he finished, I said, "Aren't you the guy who used to pull a sock puppet out of your sweatpants?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's a good point. Yep, let's move on."
The bar is in the eye of the beholder, for sure.
There it is, Eric. He has such not an F it attitude, but he is very much like, he's like, whatever. I did it. It was fun. I live in a ranch in the middle of nowhere now. Like,
he's so zen now, dude. I love this version of Eric Bischoff. I love every version, to be honest,
because he will be equal parts. Wrestling is no good today, and I wouldn't be on the show if they asked me to. And then he'll be like, I would do some work with these people. Like, I feel like it changes every week.
Yeah,
depending on his mood. Thomas, what do you think about his defense of using this segment?
So I can understand his defense of it. They tried, right? Yeah. Aside from Chucky, what else happened on WC? Like RoboCop, you know what I mean? Like he showed up.
Yep.
There have been times that they've tried to cross promote. Like he said, it can't. I have no issue with like any kind of cross promotion. I will say, his defense of it doesn't bother me so much as his bother is the wrong word. Him defending it, taking credit for it and what it kind of caused in the future. I'm on the fence about. I think I like how it was done on Nitro, in my opinion. It was a quick clip, a little confusing, but then over kind of, and it's very unique. It's not something that happened every week. No. It wasn't like, okay, Chucky did become a wrestler, even though it was confusing to that one kid. Like, it didn't become a regular occurrence, So why not? Why not have like some fun promotion on a show? But I'm of the mind that you need to do it in a way that you're still protecting wrestling. And I think in 1998, no social media to be found. So like, you can't even, other than like very, very small, like 1%, whatever, like, you can't really be too concerned about that kind of thing, and what's happening week to week is going to stay happening, and it's not going to kill any kind of magic in any other way,
So if anything, they probably just got like a nice, I think he even says, he's like, I think that went through the marketing department.
Yeah,
they probably got like a nice little bump. And this is the same guy. One of my favorites, I was talking to Ryan about this before. There are certain things that Eric Bischoff will talk about the same way, no matter when he is asked about them. And one of those things is Mike Tyson. And he always talks about how he felt that was a turning point when they lost to WWE, was bringing in Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of shows his like allure, like how how there's an allure to that kind of stuff to him. Like he thinks like we have to bring in non-wrestling related people to promote the product. So I think that it makes sense.
Totally fair. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
The stars of that day, even now, like, as much as I'm not a fan whatsoever of Logan Paul, he brings in a wide audience, right? Like,
right.
It's how, and that's like a special occasion. That's very different than like, like a Chucky or a Mike Tyson who are doing like a one-off in that way. Like he's even more involved. So I get it. I totally understand the cross promotion and like that kind of appeal of like an outside celebrity.
Yeah.
Right.
I also love
Jelly Roll.
Eat like jelly
Sorry, keep
roll.
going.
Yeah.
Like jelly roll.
Oh no, I
just
was
like
gonna
saying jelly
say.
roll.
Me too, man. It just
Yeah, yeah,
rolls
yeah.
off the tongue
It
like
really does.
jelly.
How dare
Anyways,
you. You're fired.
Bischoff. Might as well be right at this point. I feel like you're carrying the show, buddy.
No,
You are
stop it.
killing
Keep going. Keep say what you were gonna say. Say what you're gonna say.
You're killing it. Eric Bischoff bragging that I was the first to do this, which he does for everything, and being like, WWE has me to thank for Chucky, because this would be a pattern going forward, right? With WWE.
Yeah. And it's so funny you mentioned the brag. There's a moment in the Mr. McMahon documentary where he says something. He's like, yeah, we did this first and then they did it. And, and it cuts to the worst person alive, Vince McMahon, and he goes, Eric thinks that? Okay. Like, and that's it. That's all he says about it. Just gotta move that.
Yeah, he's probably right.
Which like to me is like I feel like Vince McMahon would like talk about something more if it didn't get under his skin. And I think that kind of lack of acknowledgement shows that Bischoff knows he's just kind of like needling him a little bit. So this gimmick was dusted off again about 15 years later, just about, or longer than 25 years, longer, 23
man.
years
way
later.
Longer,
Jesus.
That's the crazy part. It's way longer.
Yes. Yep, with a short little segment with Chucky. Now, this one I do understand a little bit more from a network perspective. Because at least with the other one, it's Bride of Chucky. That's not airing on TNT or anything like that. It was a movie that was out and was probably going to be popular at the time. This one, Chucky was airing directly after NXT. Okay. Immediately afterward. So if I remember correctly, it was either this night or one of the other ones. I think this was the second time he comes back. I couldn't find a clip for the first time, but they made him kind of like MC to also basically get all the wrestling fans to not change the channel after NXT was over. I think that's the attempt. But I would also agree that it is less effective than the first one. Even with the first one being kind of like clunky and being kind of pre-recorded, it's a little different. What do you guys think?
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this the time where the TV show came out, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
It's
this
now
would have been
airing...
the Chuck. Yep.
Okay, the TV show. Okay. I'm trying to get my Chucky timeline all together. Okay, so the show had premiered and Chucky was kind of cross-promoting, and look, you sent us the promos for NXT. I loved the wheel of like death or whatever that Chucky was spinning. It reminded me a lot of the Halloween Havoc Texas death match.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. They did have a weird
spun the
spinning wheel at one point. Yeah.
So I think maybe that was sort of a callback to the early Halloween Havoc days. But yeah, so what was this about? Was Chucky like stalking another Steiner, or what was going on here?
Go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of the connective tissue, right? That's what the perfect storm is, the fact that Braun Breaker is a Steiner, right? He's Rick's son. He's Scott Steiner's nephew. So there, of course, like, and that WCW Chucky clip is so like infamous, regardless of what you think of it. Like some people, it's like, oh, this is like a wrestle crap thing. Other people is like, I remember that fondly. Other people are like, I have no idea. There's like notoriety around that clip, which I think is why, if I'm sitting in NXT's writers' room, I'm like, that's perfect. Of course we can involve that. Like there's some precedent, right? As far as like the modern execution and what it means, I have to say, whatever you think of WCW 1998 and of whatever you think of NXT 2023 or whenever this was, they're two very different things. Very, very different things. Like there's some things that are about WCW at that time that's like, the peak of when, that's like right after or right before they're winning the ratings war with WWE. So it's hard for them to do wrong. It was like a super sports based presentation, even with the silliness. I'm not saying NXT is not super sports based, but it's different. Like the entertainment factor is way more, if not just as important in the current era of wrestling, no matter how you want to slice it. So I think with that in mind, Chucky, you know, kind of being around and bringing up this idea and creating something new with like a second generation of a Steiner, like if I'm a wrestling fan, like 1,000%, and I've watched every episode of wrestling and I'm like sharing this with my kids, like what's better than something you can like explain to your kid and have a callback, like his dad is this person, you know, anything that you're discussing like wrestling history while enjoying what's happening. That's like the sweet spot in my opinion, because that's going to keep somebody tuning in like week after week, whether it's so for like a casual wrestling, so for like a diehard wrestling viewer, let's say, a great thing. Like a casual, I don't know. I'm not sure what this is gonna make you think. I think wrestling has a hard time sometimes losing a stigma of like silliness or too much entertainment or whatever you want to call it. And does something like this help? Depends who you ask. Like it's almost like a case by case basis. Are you into this kind of thing or are you not? I'm personally a little more into like sports-based wrestling, really, not in like a way that someone says it's that, but it's not that. So the entertainment factor of it being like throughout, you know, kind of sketched throughout the entire show, it's not going to make a difference to me one way or the other. It might lead me to a point that I like get a little exhausted and feel I need to change the channel. That's just me as a viewer, you know? But I love Chucky and I always have. So you love Chucky, you love wrestling. What's the issue with two of your favorite things crossing over, as long as it's not like a, you know, a zombie dance or something? There's those other things they've done that are way too far.
Randy Orton having black goo come out of his mouth.
That kind of stuff. I just, you know, I get it. A lot of people make like Undertaker comparisons and such, but like, it's tough. It's a really delicate balance, and wrestling is so out in the open. Everyone, you know, talks like they're in the writer's room, whether you are like a low level casual fan or like a high level like diehard. That's how we debate wrestling, right? So Chucky is Chucky, man. He's like, I hate to use the word iconic because it's such like a cliche these days, but he is like that's like a true like icon in like pop culture, you know, like Chucky. There's a lot to it. So why not?
I'd say like honestly, top 3 or 4 horror icons
probably up there.
Going up with the slashers.
100%.
And honestly, like to me, this one would make more sense than having like a Freddy Krueger or a Michael Myers or a Jason Voorhees.
Now hold on. Now Freddy, Freddy already had it. Ryan, I want you to look up later when Freddy versus Jason came out, which was directed by Ronnie Yu, who also directed.
I have seen that one.
Yes, who also directed Bride of Chucky. They did a weigh-in. They did a weigh-in in Vegas. I remember watching it where it was those two squaring off. Like, and that's what's I rewatched that movie recently. What's kind of silly is they kind of devolve into an MMA fight at one point that also has like Looney Tunes gags in it. Like they're just like everything. Let's just throw everything into this fight.
Sound effects and everything.
For. They knew what it was. They knew what it was. The last segment we'll talk about, because then we can wrap things up because I know Ryan has to get running. So Thomas, you like wrestling and Chucky mixed together.
Yeah.
Chucky on wrestling. How do you feel about wrestling on Chucky?
Oh my goodness. So I have Alexa Bliss.
Just a sec for people who can't see. Liv Morgan was in season 2 of Chucky. No, it's okay. You're good. Liv Morgan appeared on the 2nd season of Chucky. And it was a big thing for her. I just noticed that she's got the little design on her sleeve, the good guy design. But I guess it was a dream of hers to get killed by Chucky, and she got that wish.
I want Chucky to kill me.
Isn't that a dream?
It's a dream. I don't want a starring role. I don't want to lead. I just want to be brutally murdered by Chucky.
So, how did you feel about this segment?
First of all, I am not good because I called Liv Morgan Alexa Bliss, so that's like, you know. Cardinal sin, like, you know, I'm afraid
Dominic
for this
Mysterio is going to come
internet
after
now,
you.
but like, you know, it is what it is. I think her being on the show, it was a fun cameo because by that I really like that second season most of all of the TV show, because by the end of it, they just I'm not going to say a lot of people might say they like gave up or they ran out of ideas or something, but I don't agree. I think it gets like a little surreal at the end.
Yeah.
And I like surreal things to happen, you know, whatever it is, that type of influence is always a good thing to me. So I like that Liv Morgan was on the show. The segment was okay. Her acting ability, whatever. She's a wrestler making a cameo. It's just like
and acting with nothing really.
Baywatch, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Wrestlers can act. They make cameos on shows. That's how it works, and it worked in this case. Good for her to be a big fan. I think what challenges me about this stuff is I just like wrestlers in general are just like, especially I think sometimes like a wrestler like a Liv Morgan who has like a really strong social media presence. I'm not trying to take money out of anyone's pocket or like food out of anyone's mouth, but social media presence is way too much for me with respect to wrestling these days. Sure. I think these guys are very, you know, Liv Morgan is very popular and it's only getting more popular with her like story with Dominic Mysterio and everything. Like, it's very clear that like she has a connection with people, but to kind of like when you are like a little perpetually online in that way and you are constantly putting yourself out there to the point where also in that clip you sent, they showcased that she went on a podcast, like talking about that she loved Chucky. Like,
right.
I'm of the mind that you know, I get it. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of fun people want to talk to people that they like, but like, I would rather nobody did it. I would rather Liv Morgan like didn't go on podcasts. I would rather like nobody really knew about her in that way. And so as far as like her being on the show, it's good. I have no issue with it. It's like what happens off the show kind of, and like the constant need for like promotion and stuff like that. It's the way of the world these days now, right? Like it is what it is, but it's
Thomas, yeah, man. I get what you're saying. It's like an oversaturation of the product. Like we want to see these characters in the element somewhere in the ring. Literally the reason we call this.
Let's go.
Like
you're rehired.
Thank you. Yep, thank God. I was worried. I need that paycheck, baby. I get it. Like, and this is the struggle with actors too nowadays. It's like there used to be a time where there was a mystery and you know, we didn't know so much about them that's why they were celebrities or icons. And you know, like, and now it's like, every week we're getting more and more a peek behind the curtain, especially in today's WWE product with Triple H, and he's all for it. Like, and I struggle because I like it. I like getting a further peek behind the curtain. It makes me appreciate the creative side of everything a little more. But then I'm also like, I don't know. I don't want to see like all of these people, you know, their Instagram stories or them getting married in real life, but then having a relationship
buying a Cybertruck.
Or buying a
Cybertruck like Liv just did and made a whole post about it to excitedly tell the world that she bought a Cybertruck.
Oh boy.
That I kind of like about it. I like to know
it makes her more of a heel. It makes her more of a heel.
There you go.
Yeah. And that's another thing. There are some people that are able to kind of turn that on their head and like play to the character that they play. But I think just wrestling fans in general, there are too many people that walk around talking about them. There's too, you know, the phrasing is, as it goes, is that kayfabe is dead, right? There are a lot of people that say it, but I'm of the mind that like kayfabe doesn't have to be dead. It really doesn't. Like we all, we know, we understand. Like you don't have to have the age old like what is wrestling argument. You can get past that, and you can just be like, you know, step back from what it is, and don't. You know, you can idolize people, but of your own volition. It's kind of a vicious back and forth between like fans and the people that like play the roles, we'll say, or do the thing. Like you don't have to be so obsessive of the actual people. And I think there are a lot of people kind of not being taught that, almost being taught the opposite, like to put it on a pedestal in a way. And I really don't, I'm really concerned. I don't want to sound like I'm like crapping on people for enjoying something, because I'm not.
No.
But what I'm saying is just like, you know, not everything, to Ryan's point, like has to be, you can kind of like step back a little bit. You can let these things just kind of live out on their own and enjoy it, and not have to be like as heavily involved in your own mind as to how kind of the pie gets made, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that benefits wrestling more than anything else when it's like that.
Yeah.
Like more than movies, more than like, unless you're talking about like a Blair Witch Project or something, where like the best thing that could ever happen to you is seeing that movie and thinking it's real. Like anything else, like only wrestling really, it benefits to like watch this and be like, wow, is that like, is this real? Like the question in your head.
Yeah.
That's the best question you can be asking, like when you're thinking about wrestling.
Well, and unlike movies or whatever, television, like these characters are evolving on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Like there's so much like that. I commend them. Like they have to be this character. There's no off switch. You know what I mean? So I feel like sometimes it's these moments of like individuality on social media is them being like, oh, finally I can be myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
that being said, I love this segment. I've never seen the Chucky television show, but this segment was so enjoyable. It makes me want to watch the TV show. So job well
the
done.
show's very good. The show's very good. And I also like to what you guys were saying, just to piggyback off of it. As much as you know, things get out there, yada yada. The Undertaker had a gimmick for so long that he could kind of like be himself privately, and now I think, and there used to be more gimmicks like that, and now there aren't really as much. Like people are using their real names. They're doing a lot of things that it's like those walls are kind of not as much there. You know what I mean? Like even I think like CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's feud is a great example of recent like, playing with the idea of is this real or not without going like overboard. But like even somebody like CM Punk, nobody's calling him Phil Brooks. Like we're seeing probably who he is, but you don't think so, Thomas?
I think there are a lot of people that call him that like disrespectfully almost, and that's also part of the problem.
Interesting.
I think people approach CM Punk and say, "Hey Phil," you know, or whatever, and I think that's also part of the fandom of it is like, I really like Punk. He's, you know, been a super nice guy to me every time I've met him and talked to him and whatever. Like I know that he appreciates like that kind of kayfabe idea. I know, you know, I interviewed him over Comic-Con this past summer, and he referenced like, I told a quick story about the last time I saw him at a Comic-Con like 10 years ago, and it was when he had run away with the WWE championship, and it was like, where is he going to turn up or whatever. And Comic-Con was the first place he showed up to like yell at, bark at Triple H. It's like nobody saw that coming. Everything about it felt real. It's like one of the last times I've felt like, you know, that I'm like living amongst this kind of like kayfabe situation. And he's totally right. But I think that bothers, I think to the side of like, we can say as much as we want that fans should be a certain way, but there are some people that don't want that, right? There are some people that are like, you kind of owe me your personal life. You owe me the knowledge of all of this. You owe me, like, you know, or I'm even worse. Like I'm just as famous as you. I've got an Instagram of 25.6K followers. Like those kind of people make it, I think, even more challenging to live this life because everyone is like living their 15 minutes of fame of their own accord in this day and age. It's a very different thing than like 1998 Halloween Havoc, right? Like, or 1998 Bride of Chucky zone. Like everyone now has their opinions and has their opinions of themselves also. And that's tough. That's what was tough for me training as a wrestler. I didn't want any involvement with that. That's what's tough for me, like watching wrestling now. That's, you know, the kind of you can say like, well, just ignore what all the fans and what they say and the rhetoric and whatnot, but it's kind of hard. It's like almost its own character on the show, like the fans and their personality and who they do and don't like. And you know, it's hard to really tell where that goes, but a person like CM Punk knows how it should be. And that's why those matches, like his Hell in a Cell match, everybody who had like rave reviews for it, you know, like that's why that stuff you can joke about like the bracelet that they were feuding over, but it's like he took like a kind of a real life story, pushed it in. I still kind of feel like Drew and Punk don't really like each other, and that's okay. Like they're adults, they know how to work together, and they know how to like make some like really entertaining, like real feeling stories out of what they're doing. And to me, that's what wrestling should be, like Chucky or no Chucky. You can make the exception for Chucky here and there, but like make sure that it feels as real as possible, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end. Thomas,
I love that.
First of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to hang out with us and yak and all that good stuff. If people want more of you, where can they look?
I'm under a rock, probably. No, I'm director of creative and production at Ringside Collectibles. So I work on like kind of our own toy offerings and also like what our social presence is. It's a lot of work. There's a lot going on. There's more Mattel WWE and Jazzwares AEW action figures now than ever before. So if you're like a toy collector, especially like a wrestling toy collector, it's like and it's your favorite thing. There's never been a better time to be alive, basically. So wrestlingfigures.com, any wrestling action figure you could ever possibly want or think of or need, like that's the place to start. That's our website. On socials, it's at Ringside C, and that's you know, you'll see new images, stuff that's upcoming, stuff that's kind of already in stock. Like if you're looking to kind of start an action figure collection, all kinds of fun things to do with it. That's the place to do it. And I do regular unboxings on there. I have my own Instagram tagged there, and you know, I'm pretty open and honest guy when it comes to wrestling toys and wrestling. So I'm happy to have a chat with anybody at any time. So
hell yeah. Awesome. Ryan, what are you up to aside from being tired and running all over the place and staying up until 3 a.m. catching ghosts?
Yeah, catching them. Yeah,
I have to say, like,
dude,
I'm already now that we've broken the ice between
profession I can think of is this guy right here. Like, that's,
you guys will be in the same continent within 2 weeks. So
coming
now
weeks,
that
you're going back, huh?
Yeah,
I will be back home in Scotland on November 2nd. But yeah.
That'd be great.
The new season of the Ghost Show I'm on, which is called Haunted, premieres on Eastlink here in Canada, where I currently am, October 26th. So this Friday, I believe. No,
excellent.
Yeah, October 26th, whatever day that is.
Yeah, sweet.
Friday. You can find the first 4 seasons on YouTube at the Eastlink YouTube channel. Check that out. But yeah, man, just hunting ghosts, doing the UFO thing still every week.
Somewhere in the skies.
In the skies. And that's where you can find me. What about you,
Sweet.
Andrew?
Yeah, as always, you can watch my short film Pay the Tithe on Vimeo if you're looking for something spooky. This Friday, if you live in the New York City area and feel like coming to Brooklyn, which you should, head on out to Dumbo on Friday night. Come see All Hallows Eve or The Tragedy of Michael Myers, which is a Shakespearean adaptation of Halloween that I wrote, and I will be playing Dr. Loomis. It'll be different than that. I was doing it last night. My voice kind of hurts. So, but that'll be a lot of fun. You can get tickets at theratnyc.com. As always, patreon.com/somewhere in the ring on socials. And for next week, go find Leprechaun Origins, starring, I can't remember Hornswoggle's real name. I feel really bad about that right now, but I am very excited.
Don't feel bad. It's okay. That's funny.
Yeah. But he just, like last year, did a podcast finally talking about it, and we're going to talk about some of the juxtaposition, because him talking about it when the movie came out is very different than him talking about it now. That's a little tease for that. What? So Leprechaun Origins, check it out. Y'all, thank you, as always, for listening. And Thomas, to end the show, we always have our guests ring the bell to get us out of here. So whatever that means to you, please ring the bell, send us home.
I'm just going to give you a nice ding, ding.
This has been Somewhere in the Ring. Thank you for listening. Subscribe wherever you get your pods, and be sure to rate and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever possible. We'll see you again soon, somewhere in the ring.